Canada is absolutely collapsing and you need to get out before they stop you leaving, because in some of these Western countries like Canada, the UK, the United States, that door is closing because they don't want you to leave, they don't want your money to leave. Countries like Canada are going through massive changes right now with mass immigration programs that are diluting the culture down. There's been no plan to actually integrate these people. And as somebody who actually emigrated to Canada from the UK and actually obviously assimilated into Canadian society, I know that basically there is no effort at all for these people to integrate, and there's no planning that has been done either. There's no planning that has been done with police, with healthcare, with infrastructure. So you have problems with absolutely every one of those. Because if you look at healthcare, for example, you've got people dying on wait lists because they can't get the care in the Canadian healthcare system. And not only that, there's no private options that are even available for those that can afford it. And a lot of people will say, well, you don't need private healthcare in Canada because we've got free healthcare. And the reality is, it's far from free. Most people are paying a couple of $100 a month with their work to actually get insurance for everything that Canada's healthcare doesn't cover. And then you've got all the tax that people are paying as well for the healthcare system. And then still you might end up paying because your insurance doesn't cover all those outpatient services, all those things like drugs that are not covered by the Canadian free healthcare system. And the healthcare system in Canada is an absolute joke. I mean, when I was back in Canada, it was over a month to get an appointment with my doctor, which made it completely pointless. And in fact, telehealth was becoming more common because at least then you could actually see a doctor. And if you went to the ER, you might be waiting 10, 11 hours. You just end up giving up. And that is really the fact. If you've got like a non-urgent issue and you want to see your doctor, where do you go? You can't get in to see your doctor, so people end up going to the ER, and then that clogs up the ERs, and it's just a complete disaster. It's a disaster across all the major provinces, but it's not just healthcare. The reason why people are leaving is because they've had enough of the bullshit. They've had enough of being told what to do by the government, the creeping authoritarianism that is happening in Canada, and they're just sick of it. And that's the reality. In the future, it looks increasingly likely that this door is going to close. So if you don't have a plan B right now, then what is going to happen in the future? Maybe next year, where they say, actually, now if you leave Canada, we're counting your primary residence and the sale of that in your capital gains for your exit tax when you leave. And that would financially handcuff a lot of people to Canada, because a lot of people right now who are leaving Canada are people who bought real estate and have basically built up a massive amount of wealth sitting on this housing bubble. They just bought a house and lived in it, but now it's worth over $1 million, and they're like, this country is shit and it's going down the toilet fast, so let's get out of here and we can sell it and move to another country, and we don't have to pay any tax on the sale of that home because it's our primary residence. There's an exemption in Canada for that. So I could see that going out the window. And then you've also got the talk about wealth taxes in places like the UK, where they look at the value of your total assets and then they tax you on that. And even exit taxes have been discussed in the UK as well. So there's different things that are coming in, and they're all designed to make people not leave. Because the thing is, instead of actually turning the country, making it into a better country, these politicians are only focused on lining their own pockets. And that's what people don't understand. It's a uni party, not just in Canada, but in the UK and in the United States, where you're just tossing back and forth between these two parties for the past 3 decades or more. And essentially you've had the same collapse, you've had the same scandals, you've had the same corruption, and you're led to believe every election cycle that things are going to somehow be different, when the power structures behind the scenes, they're not changing at all. So nothing fundamentally changes. And what I've realized in my time on this planet is basically you can't change any of that shit. There's nothing that you can do about that. They want you to believe that your vote counts. And I'm not saying don't vote here, because I do believe in democracy and you should vote in elections. But I'm just saying the value of voting and electing these parties that act like they're really different when in fact they're very similar is just completely stupid. And we have to take this and think, is there actually any difference between these two? What are the massive promises that I'm hearing from different sides? And there were none in the Canadian election, if you really think about it. Where were the huge promises? I mean, there was none. There was none. We're going to save you, maybe $800 on your taxes per year. We're going to save you maybe $1,000, maybe $1,500 on your taxes per year. Meanwhile, we're going to you by eating away your savings through inflation by at least $2,200 a year. So you're still behind, but it looks like we're putting you ahead. And unfortunately, most people don't think critically. And people in Canada, they are worked to the bone. You know, they don't get barely any time off work at all, and productivity has been absolutely tanking. And you don't have to be a rocket scientist. The data is out there. For countries where people are overworked, like the United States and Canada, the productivity isn't necessarily better just because they're working more. In fact, it starts to go the opposite way because of stress and mental strain, and that's exactly what you see in Canada, with people being burnt out all the time, people having heart attacks and just dropping dead at work. I mean, I met a retired guy here who had been working for a company in the United States, and he essentially passed out and everything whilst he was at work because he was out on a hot roof, and his doctor said to him, look, if you don't stop working now, you're gonna die. And that is when he said, right, that's it, I'm retiring, I'm done with it. And that is just how bad it gets, because you shouldn't work all your life for essentially that retirement, because that's not life. That's not life, just working like a dog every single day just so that you can get to retirement. You might not even make it there. I mean, nobody actually knows that they're actually going to make it to retirement, and then a lot of people die within 5 years of retiring. So it's not like retiring is this whole amazing thing with sunshines and rainbows and unicorns. It's actually not that. And the thing is, if you have kids in the UK or Canada or the United States, your kids, you don't actually see them that much because they have to go to daycare. They have to go to daycare because people have to work, because guess what? We're back to that cost of living again, and the cost of living is so insane that it means that you can't spend all the time with your kids and watch them grow up. No, you have to send them to some little daycare school that is also bankrupting you, by the way. And it's just this cycle that I realized that this whole Western lifestyle that is pumped up mainly by Hollywood movies is just a lie and a con, and it's one of the biggest scams in history that people don't realize. Because maybe you go to Venezuela or Colombia and you ask people, do you want to go to the United States, do you want to work in the United States, and most of them would jump at the opportunity to do so, a lot of them not realizing that they had a better life just where they were. They had more sense of community around them, they had a tighter social circle around them, because the reality is the West is so disconnected. There's no community anymore. There's no social circles. People don't talk to their neighbors. You know, crime is such a big problem that everybody is skeptical of each other. And it just leads to this society where everybody is very segregated and disconnected. And then you add in like the immigration, the massive immigration that's come into Canada with no way of actually integrating these people. I think it's really really important to plan your plan B right now. Plan your exit. I mean, my plan B became my plan A, and it's the life that I'm living now. And even I'm lining up a plan B on this, because I think you've always got to be on your toes. In the climate that we're in, with multiple wars going on, and the fact that there is just creeping authoritarianism, and the fact that you need to have the right that if you don't like something, that you can leave. I want to say this because it's true, and a lot of people won't accept it, is nothing will change in these Western countries. Voting in new parties is not going to change, because the people who back those parties, the elite power structures that are behind the scenes running the show of these countries at the top of these large banks, major corporations, they are ultimately the ones with all the power and calling the shots. So you might think that you are electing this new party that's going to do all these different things, and there is vanity projects that they all have every different cycle. Nothing really much changes for the average person, and their standard of living is absolutely collapsing. And one statistic that I point to extensively, because if you look at history, it's the one thing that really you look at and think this lines up exactly with when society started to collapse, is CEO pay. CEO pay has absolutely skyrocketed. It really started to get going in the 80s and the 90s, and then it's just absolutely skyrocketed since then. And that has meant that the shared prosperity of working for a business has not been shared equally anymore like it used to be, or more equally, should I say. And it's not about communism. I'm actually a capitalist at heart. It is more just about the fact that there is a massive amount of greed, and people believe by hoarding the money that they can hoard the power. And that's true to an extent, because if you look at what's happened over the past 20, 30 years and how society's become more and more corrupt, especially in these elite power circles, then you'll just know that that has worked, and that's why they continue to do it. So it's until there's a massive pushback, which will never happen because it won't be allowed to happen every time it's tried to happen, like things like the Freedom Convoy that are anti-establishment, the government moves in immediately and breaks it all up, even if it is a peaceful demonstration. And again, that was when it all really changed for me, was when I saw that Freedom Convoy and what happened in Canada, because I realized that if you can do that to a peaceful protest, whether you agree or disagree, and you can turn people against each other, then really that is not a country that is ever going to be in a good place anymore. And really it is a country that has collapsed, and really it is a country that is being controlled. And that's really what you see. Mark Carney, he was not elected, he was placed in that position of power, and it started with the propaganda years before, when you were hearing that Mark Carney might become the Prime Minister or might try and run for Liberal leadership. So the mind-numbing propaganda, it continues, and people are leaving, and they're done. Just make sure you leave before the shit gets really bad and they try and stop you from leaving, which they're already doing. So if you've enjoyed this video, I'd highly recommend this video here. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one.